The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Greenfield Savings Bank, providing residential lending advice. Greenfield Savings Bank, member FDIC, DIF, equal housing lender, NMLS 409187.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalif Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte.
I totally know the name of this show.
Sure you do.
And today is all about science, both on the ground and in the skies, and kind of both if you think about it.
So later, we'll head to Gill with Marshall Escamilla and Lindsay Patterson of the Tumble Science Podcast for kids based out of Greenfield, who've just created a Dino Tracks map of Western Massachusetts for NEPM that you can check out at NEPM.org.
But it's way more fun to go and find the tracks ourselves, so that's what we're getting up to. And where the skies are concerned, Mr. Universe has a place you should look towards.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
We're really leaning into this Science Monday thing here today because we're going to talk all about dinosaur footprints and where NEPM can help you go through the Connecticut River Valley and find yourself as a dinosaur footprint explorer where these dinosaur footprints live. But to keep the shameless science plugs going, NEPM Television, Salman Hamid, Hampshire College astronomer from Kynot Studios here at your Amherst kitchen table. You have been loving NEPM Television and WGBH, our parent company's program, Nova.
I want to talk more about it at some other time, maybe give more time, but...
You want to go to Boston to the mothership to go see how Nova happens. That'll be fun.
Actually, that's exactly what I asked you to do. Yes, we have to do that, but I just want to say that I had sort of lost a little bit interest in Nova, and partly because it looked to me that it was trying to compete with History Channel or others, where
ancient aliens.
Right. It was just not that the content was like that, but the presentation oftentimes would be loud, bombastic music, and sort of everything was okay, this is some action film. Sometimes it's the wonder component, which again, I come from the Carl Sagan School of Wonder.
Yeah.
And so that is really important to absorb stuff because the universe is amazing. You don't need bombastic music to go with that, hey, things are going to kill you.
Yeah.
Here is an asteroid coming. And I don't want to miss a thing. No, hey, it is cool.
Plus space is totally silent. It's a vacuum, so there's no sound up there at all. No bombastic music, no nothing.
That is true as well. But here is the cool thing. The new season, and I've been watching with my 11-year-old as well. It's Nova Solar System. And we have watched 2 of the episodes. Our TV broke, actually. We do watch it on TV.
Tragedy.
Sorry, we are old. But we have watched 2 episodes, and I think 4 of them are out. Storm Worlds and Strange Worlds. And I have to say, it is spectacular. The series is spectacular. One of the things that I really liked about it was it's for everybody. And by everybody, I mean, I know a little bit about the solar system and things like that.
You know more than a little bit.
But I was glued to it because the type of examples they picked are not the most commonly used examples. And so you go well, this moon, I didn't know much about that. Or if something is happening on Jupiter, the type of things they would pick up are actually really interesting for me, but for my wife and for my kid. For them also it was interesting because the way they would explain it, they would actually focus on the foundational science concepts, but the type of examples they are using are fascinating. And one last thing I want to say about that, a lot of the ones also emphasize what makes science interesting. Mm-hmm. So for example, it's not just, here is a solution, but rather, hey, this is what makes sense, but guess what? This is not what is happening here. So what might be happening? The people that are being interviewed on the show, they're fantastic, and you can actually see their enthusiasm and also how they are trying to solve a problem. And so I highly, highly recommend watching Nova on
NEPM TV.
Shameless plug.
I didn't ask him to do this shameless plug. He wanted to do this shameless plug all by himself, but I will add to it that if you become a supporter of NEPM, you get passports, so you get access to Nova and the Ken Burns documentaries and all of these television things. You support radio, you support TV at the same time, NEPM.org. This is not a fund drive at this point, but support NEPM now. What are we going to talk about, though, in our own mini version of Nova? Nova means won't go in Spanish, but we're going to vamos. Let's go.
I thought that we can spend the rest of the time on actually a really spectacular image from James Webb Space Telescope. Oftentimes people say, hey, what is James Webb doing? And yes, it has been doing fantastic science, but you also have sometimes spectacular images that come out. And the image that I have on an iPad, not everybody can see.
No, radio listener, you'll have to imagine this.
And you can actually Google or whatever you do, NGC 602. That's the name of this star-forming region. It's a beautiful image. And what's interesting about that, this is not part of the Milky Way galaxy. In fact, this nebula, this gaseous stellar nursery or where stars are forming, is actually part of small Magellanic Clouds, which is a satellite galaxy to the Milky Way. Mm-hmm. And so it's much smaller than us. It's visible from the southern hemisphere. You should be able to, if there are listeners in the southern hemisphere, you should be able to see with the naked eye large Magellanic and small Magellanic Clouds. And what this shows, Hubble Space Telescope had looked at this region. There is a beautiful picture that Hubble Space Telescope took. But Hubble Space Telescope deals with the visible light that we are sensitive to with our eyes.
Meaning we can actually see it with our real human eyes in our real human capacity.
And what it found was there are a lot of stars being formed. And in the middle of it, you have some large stars which are 10 to 20 times more massive than our sun. And these are the stars, their light, which is oftentimes they emit a lot of ultraviolet light and others. It has carved out a cavity in this nebula. It's a little bit like people are familiar with pillars of creation, because that is also the reason why those pillars have formed. It's because light from big, massive stars have carved out those regions. And so some of
Google that image too, by the way. It's another gorgeous image.
This is called photoevaporation, or basically through light you are vaporing off some of the gases. And so the denser parts take a longer time compared to less dense parts. And that's the reason why you have these structures that get formed. And so that's what Hubble had done. And James Webb Space Telescope, because it works in the infrared, it can reveal a lot more in the picture because it can see through dust, gas and dust a bit more. But what is interesting about this particular image now is that James Webb Space Telescope has revealed for the first time these objects called brown dwarfs in another galaxy. So we knew about these brown dwarfs in the Milky Way. Now brown dwarfs are basically failed stars or objects that were not massive enough to have nuclear fusion of hydrogen into helium. So when we talk about, hey, what is a star? We say, well, at the center, there is fusion going on between hydrogen into helium. Mm-hmm. But these brown dwarfs are a little bit smaller than stars, and so they do not fuse hydrogen into helium. You can think of it much, much bigger than, for example, planet Jupiter. So they are expected to be between 13 to 75 times the mass of Jupiter.
Jupiter is so big that, in theory, it could have turned into a star if fusion kicked up in the middle there, but it turned into a big, giant, gaseous planet. So is Jupiter considered a brown dwarf or not big enough to be?
No, so it's not. So there is a different type of fusion that happens, but so there is a particular definition regarding brown dwarfs. But no, Jupiter is much smaller than a brown dwarf. So as I said, it's between 13 to 75 times the mass of Jupiter would be these objects that are brown dwarfs.
Why are they called dwarfs?
Because they are small.
Compared to other suns.
Compared to other stars, yeah. Right, compared to other...
so this brown dwarf is sleepy, which makes it unhappy. It's a little grumpy. It's dopey because it doesn't have any fusion. And bashful Doc. Who am I missing?
And it's from South Asia.
He said it, I didn't.
But the thing about these, so by definition from that perspective, they are also free-floating. So they are not part of orbiting around another star, but they are free-floating. So in the Milky Way, we have discovered around 3,000 of these brown dwarfs. Now, the interesting question that astronomers had, so when you look at these star-forming regions, and we know how stars form, so a few big stars, but a lot more smaller stars. This is something called a stellar mass function. This is really important because you have to make assumptions from what you are seeing, the light that you are seeing, into how many stars there are. Mm-hmm. That assumption comes from this thinking that what is the distribution of stars that form in a nebula? So you have a few big stars, but a lot more smaller stars. That's how it goes. It's like something that shatters. For example, a glass. You would have smaller big pieces and a lot more small pieces.
Yeah.
And so...
And then you step on them because you thought you swept up appropriately, and then all of a sudden you're wounded for like a week and a half.
So the question is, well, we knew about the smallest stars, and there is a relation, sort of like, people try to figure out, okay, if this many big stars, then this many small stars. The question was that, is there a lower mass cutoff? Is there a place where you just stop forming stars? So brown dwarfs in that case are really important because they are the lowest possible thing. They're smaller than the smallest stars. So the question is, do those brown dwarfs stop forming in the same line, or the relationship from the big to the small extend all the way to the smallest objects in there? Mm-hmm. And what it looks like, so why this image, apart from being spectacularly beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's also important because it looks like astronomers have detected in this particular system about 64 candidate brown dwarfs. And if you go to the James Webb site, there is also, in one of the places, there is also a slider between Hubble Space Telescope image of the same region and the James Webb Telescope image. And you can actually see the finer details that are coming from James Webb. And you can also see the smaller stars showing up in there. And so, well, this is all well and good, but why am I calling them candidates? Mm-hmm. It's because
Snow White has to approve them as dwarfs.
I am Snow White, and I approve this message.
It's because there still could be background galaxies that are really, really far away, or there could be some background stars. And so they still have to do more work to figure out whether these are there or not. But it looks like that astronomers have discovered these 64 potential brown dwarfs in another galaxy, which is for the first time has been found. And it looks like that the relationship, as I mentioned, the stellar mass function of how many big stars versus the small stars, it continues smoothly all the way to brown dwarfs. So brown dwarfs are kind of like stars. That's what it means. It's like their process of formation in the nebula is the same as the process of formation of other stars.
So they're like D-list stars as opposed to like the A-list stars that get, to walk the red carpet and all that.
That, I think that is accurate. And can I mention one other thing when you are looking at this image?
Yeah.
So there are close to 1,500 stars in there. But to me, one of the amazing parts of it is it almost looks like there is a hole in the sky, right? Because that nebula is coming in. But look at the edges, because in those edges, you will find galaxies.
Whole other galaxies with billions of stars on their own.
But those galaxies are far, 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 far away. But they just happen to be captured in the image. You can also see some galaxies through this nebula as well. And I just find it's like a portal. When you look at this image, to me, it was just so spectacular. It's like a portal in the sky. You have this object in front of you, only, I should mention, 200,000 light years away. Nothing.
Pretty close comparatively.
Even the Andromeda galaxy is 2 million light years away. But some of these galaxies, they would be hundreds of millions, if not billion light years away. And you are seeing in the same image, you are just looking at in that direction. I just find that absolutely spectacular.
A quick question about the image itself. You said you can slide back and forth between the Hubble image and the James Webb image. The Hubble image in the visible light spectrum, meaning we really see it. The James Webb image from infrared, which must be translated into visible light for us to see. Now, it's hard for me to swallow, because in reality, this picture is an artist's rendering. There's no other way to describe it. Really, it has been a scientific artist's rendering, but an artist's rendering nonetheless.
Yes, but that is the case with Hubble image as well.
Really?
Right, because all you are getting is how many photons, or how many, you have a CCD, which is sort of like a camera. You are getting photons hitting over there, but somebody has to make a decision of what value you give to those colors, right? Because our eyes don't exactly work like a camera. And there are filters that they use in these telescopes. And so the light is filtered through a particular light. Those filters are not the same as your eyes. So even with the visible light, they actually try to translate what it would look like to human eye.
So all pictures from outer space are artist renderings, and science is a hoax.
No, and that's why I want to be clear about that. So philosophers get really interested in it. Okay, so what is real?
Yeah.
Right?
What is real? How do you define real?
There's something that we have talked about before about what is real, because we don't see the infrared.
Right.
But snakes do.
Uh-huh.
So if you ask a snake what is real, that would be a different answer to what you and I would call real.
Luckily, I'm a parcel mouth, just like Lord Voldemort and Harry Potter.
So what I would say is when you are looking at these images, so the infrared image is a much more extreme example because of course we cannot, our eyes won't be able to see that, but they are trying to give you a picture of if you could see in the infrared, here are some of the features you are going to see, right? And so and that happens in the visible light as well, that they are telling you that if you could see in visible light, this is probably you're going to kind of want to see. But for astronomers, they don't care of what it looks like in color, but rather what is the value, how bright it is in a particular wavelength.
So it's all data. The scientists are getting all data. They're interpreting the data in a way that normal humans will care about. It's like the scene in The Matrix where they show the guy who's just looking at all the ones and zeros of the Matrix, and it looks like gobbledygook, but he says,
I don't even see the code. All I see is blonde, brunette, redhead.
Actually, that's not a bad example. That's actually pretty good. Yeah. But if you want to really figure out sort of like, in terms of what a brown dwarf is doing or sort of like, or what is happening in the nebula, you are not going to be looking at, hey, what color is this? Right. No, you are actually looking at what is the value, how bright it is in a particular wavelength. Mm-hmm. And that wavelength would correspond to a color, but you are not going to be looking at a picture like this. But it's a spectacular picture.
It is a spectacular picture.
And yes, it is in the infrared. And so, no, science still works, man. And and that's why you should watch NOVA, because even though that is talking about the solar system, and it does talk about sometimes James Webb and Hubble Space Telescope images as well, those are about the solar system. And you will see how science gets done, how scientific questions get resolved. And this is just one of the examples.
And if you become a member of NEPM, you get to support the radio, and you get the passport for NOVA and all that other great stuff on television.
And David Attenborough documentaries, I think he's still making them.
I can't believe it.
It's
what a treasure.
Absolutely.
I think we'll put up the James Webb versus Hubble image slider of NGC 602 up with our podcast notes.
And a quick note that you can have David Attenborough as like the voice on your maps.
Cool.
Yeah, it's neat.
Nice.
Have I done this? Maybe. Maybe in the past I have. Next up on Impromptu Science Monday, dinosaurs.
Lindsay Patterson and Marshall Escamilla of Tumble Science Podcast for Kids takes us to the woods in Gill to look for evidence of dinosaurs at one of the many locations on the dino map they've created for NEPM.
And we learn how crucial Western Mass is to the study of dinosaurs as a whole, not just their tracks. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village, offering research-based arts, music, fitness, and lifelong learning programs at their assisted living and Alzheimer's care community in Westfield. armbrookvillage.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering co-op advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
I got a whole primer on it from the 5th graders on the soccer team that I'm coaching.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I was like, okay, so there's Skibbity, there's Sigma, and it was like, okay, so
There's a
Sigma's
song.
good. And they're like, yes, Sigma's good. Skibbity's bad. Yes. Okay.
But there
add
are...
Ohio to it. That's
Yes.
worse.
Yes.
Holy crap.
It's like OK Corral here.
Good Lord.
No wonder so many dinosaurs died in this area. We are walking on a path, Barton Cove in Gill, right near the mighty Connecticut River, with our friends from Tumble Science Podcast, Marshall Escamilla and Lindsay Patterson, because you with Tumble and we with NEPM have teamed up for something wicked fun. What is it, Lindsay?
It's the Dino Map Adventure!
It's an interactive map that you can find at NEPM's website with little audio bits about where to go and find what here in the Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts, Marshall.
To find what? To find dinosaur tracks.
Yes!
Is this where we need to go? Okay.
We're hot on the trail. Lindsay is pointing us off of the paved path up into the woods.
This is where the road ends for you, Monty.
Oh no.
I did hear the gun club over there shooting over there.
The best way to really understand how the dinosaur works is to become extinct like them.
Yes. I too want to be petrol for your car.
In 100 million years, you will be a piece of sandstone.
Now this is awesome. There's a sign here that says no rock or fossil collecting allowed. So when you have a sign like this, you realize there must be cool fossils around.
Yes, you're on the trail of fossil tracks.
Don't collect them.
But don't collect them. Just come observe them. Leave nothing but footprints. If you're a dinosaur, leave nothing but footprints. The thing that's interesting about fossils in the Connecticut River Valley that your Tumble Science podcast for kids has done so well is explain why we have this type of fossil here.
Yes, we are living in an incredible place for dinosaur fossils. In fact, it was the place where dinosaur tracks were first discovered.
In the whole world.
In the whole world, before the word dinosaur was even invented.
Nice.
What did they think it was before they realized it was dinosaurs?
Dragons.
Birds.
Well, they weren't wrong.
They weren't kind of wrong.
Yeah.
Fair.
There used to be an emu farm that was right near the entrance to Barton Cove here, and I did a Connecting Point television show with WGBY, part of NEPM, years ago with those emus, and you look at those bad Larrys and you're like, oh yeah, they are dinosaurs. One of them bit me.
And as Monty finds out, emus also bite a little.
No. I was going to ask you how they are as animals to keep. We now know they try to eat you, but I guess they can also be cuddly.
That was affectionate.
It didn't hurt that bad. It's just terrifying.
Right now we're descending into the dinosaur quarry.
You can hear them. Laura Dern, Laura Dern.
Something, I can find my own green food.
What?
No land before time, people?
Okay.
Ducky, Country, come down here. We've got green food.
Fern Gully, that feels like where we're going to right now.
That one doesn't have dinosaurs.
Does it? I don't remember.
That has fairies.
I found an ancient staircase over here. Oh no, wait, that's actually a regular old wooden staircase that somebody built here. Not in the prehistoric times.
All right, so here we are in the Lily Pond Quarry, which was where you can find, or where people did find, an example of every single dinosaur that's ever been found here in the Pioneer Valley.
So it's like a library of dinosaur footprints.
Yeah, it was. A lot of them are now in the Mineski Museum in Amherst.
Which is free, wicked fun to go to.
Yeah, It's an amazing place to go to. I cannot express how world-class of a collection that they have.
Yeah. You want to see a saber-toothed tiger? Frickin' go to the free museum at Amherst College.
Yes, I mean, they have a lot of cool, like, animal skeletons, but when you go down into the basement, there's a hall with a bunch of rocks, which is, can be potentially underwhelming if you don't know what you're looking at.
I got a rock.
But if you do know what you're looking at, it's very overwhelming because you're like, this is so cool.
It's like the Rock Hall of Fame.
Rock and roll! Here we go! Hello, Cleveland! Yeah. I mean, doesn't everybody want to go to the museum basement? That's where the fun stuff is.
That's where Pee-wee's bike is.
That's where the animals come alive and attack you at midnight on certain days of the year.
So this is was a quarry where people were quarrying to try to get construction material, right?
Not this one. This one was specifically developed looking for dinosaur fossils after the discovery was made. And they realized that there was value in this because scientists got very interested in dinosaur tracks. And so they started digging out layers of, you can see this is kind of like tilted rock, and it's thin layers. It's almost like you could imagine pulling them out like pages of a book. Mm-hmm. And when they would split these open, sometimes they would find these tracks, and they looked like bird tracks. They didn't really know what they were, and they were just fascinated by them. They thought that it was just remnants of some kind of ancient animal. They didn't know how they came to be. They didn't know how old they were, but they knew that they were kind of curious And so they started putting, this one scientist, Dr. Edward Hitchcock, started putting together this collection of any tracks that he could find to study.
Did Hitchcock believe immediately that it was the birds?
They really looked like birds.
I meant the other Hitchcock.
Yeah. But like, I think one thing to think about is like when all this was happening, this was like the 1830s, 40s, and 50s, and Darwin wouldn't publish The Origin of the Species for like, another 20 years or so. So the idea that the whole world wasn't created in 6 days was like kind of new to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so they just imagined like all these tracks, they must be something that God created that didn't get on the ark, right?
When we think about dinosaurs, unless you're well versed in the dinosaurs of this region, you think of T-Rex and you think of Triceratops and you think of Stegosaurus, and ultimately those are like...
And clever girls.
Yeah.
Clever girl.
Velociraptor.
Clever girl, I get it.
Yes.
I thought it was a band name.
No.
We think of Dinosaur Jr.
It's actually a good name. Yeah, good name for a
Dinosaur
band.
Jr. also found around these areas.
Dinosaur Jr. also found here. What types of dinosaurs and what did they look like that we're finding from the fossilized footprints that we're finding here in places like Barton Cove that you can learn about in the Tumble Science Podcast, interactive dino map at NEPM.org?
The thing is, like, a lot of what we have aren't bones of animals, but they're tracks. So all the names of the species are actually names of the track specimens, not the animals themselves. Oh. We don't actually know specifically exactly what they look like because we don't have their bones for the most part. But, there's sort of like a couple of categories. There's big three-toed tracks. There's slightly smaller three-toed tracks, which those are the ones we're going to see up there. And we sort of think that the big ones might have been something like a Dilophosaurus, which is the thing in Jurassic Park that has the big frill and goes and then
spits the
poison.
venom on Newman.
Hello, Newman.
Yeah, which all of that's made up. That's not real.
Also, velociraptors are kind of, you could punt a velociraptor if you really wanted to. Yeah,
they're a little bigger than chickens.
Yeah, those should have been Deinonychus. But the bigger ones might have been a Dilophosaurus, which Dilophosaurus would be, like, its hip would be about my head.
So big.
Big, but, like, not nearly as big as a T-Rex, which I would come up to its, like, knee. Mm-hmm. The smaller ones might have been something like Coelophysis, which is kind of a smaller two-legged dinosaur. Maybe about as high as my shoulder. We don't entirely know for sure.
Because again, we don't have the bones, we only have the footprints.
Were there any bones found in these locations too?
Yeah, on the dinosaur map, if you go to our South Hadley stop, you'll learn the story of Podokesaurus Holyokensis.
Where did it get that name, I wonder?
That's the only actual dinosaur skeleton.
So there are actually two dinosaur skeletons that have been found. One of them is Podokesaurus holyokensis, which was discovered by Minion Talbot at the Mount Holyoke campus in like 1910-ish. And there's another one, I forget the whole species name, but it's Ankylosaurus something. And it was discovered actually at the Springfield Armory when they were digging that up. Those are the only two examples of fossilized bones that we found in the valley so far.
But what's interesting is just why only two fossils that we found so far have been preserved as bones, and there are thousands upon thousands of dinosaur fossil tracks here, because this was an area where there was just like constant wet changing conditions where dinosaurs would walk and squelch their feet down deep into the mud as they went to go look for fish or, just kind of like hang out at the beach. And so
like you do.
There were lots of impressions left by just daily dinosaur behavior. And that's what's preserved here. And that's what is enabling us to learn a lot more about how dinosaurs actually moved, because then you can take those tracks and, study their paces or, what do you find together in this area. There's such a rich wealth of knowledge that scientists have gotten from the tracks found in the Pioneer Valley.
And we have something that's gross to thank for why we have so many of these tracks that I learned from your Tumble Science podcast, Lindsay Patterson. Why do we have so many well-preserved tracks between these layers?
Pond scum came and settled into the feet, and that kind of acts like a preserver for the prints, so that when the rains came through the next season or it dried up and just conditions of the climate changed from season to season, year to year, like era to era, then you would have these tracks just building up layer after layer. So we have a record from the very earliest dinosaurs in the late Triassic through the Jurassic.
About when are those? I don't remember how long ago those periods were.
Late Triassic is about 200 million years.
Everything here is like 150 million to 200 million years old. There's a story about like glaciers coming in and scraping away everything above it.
I think that's the creation of Hitchcock Lake, which
Yeah.
that was also named after the same Hitchcock that we mentioned.
Seems to be the same circumstances that give us Jurassic armored mud balls.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you guys done an episode on Jurassic Armored Mud Balls yet?
We have not.
You guys got to do that. That's the other big awesome thing from here in the valley.
Jurassic armored mud balls. Look, I heard about armored mud balls.
Armored mud balls.
Armored mud balls. Our armored mud balls.
Coming up, finding dinosaur tracks ourselves.
And getting into the details of what to look for with Lindsay Patterson and Marshall Escamilla, who created the Tumble Science Podcast Dino Map with NEPM.
And we'll learn where you can accidentally stalk other scientists and locations where models and dino prints are.
And meet tiny budding paleontologists on their own dino-seeking adventure.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by UMass Amherst School of Public Policy, offering graduate programs in public affairs, public policy and administration, data analytics, and computational social science. umass.edu/SPP. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, offering solar options, energy security, and solutions for the local community. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
Let me wait for a plane to pass.
They're going to the Turners Falls Airport.
Oh, wow. It's like we've got shooting ranges, we've got airports, we've got many loud sources of noise.
There were people in a motorboat fishing, but the motor wasn't on.
Yeah, close your ears and imagine a time before this.
The land before time.
Land before regional airports.
First when I was looking up, I could only see a bird, and I was like, man, that bird's got a noisy engine.
That's actually what dinosaurs sounded like.
Yeah.
I'm imagining. Okay, so we're in this quarry that was quarried out because they started to find these dinosaur fossil footprints, and there's a staircase right here. We're going through the interactive.
Because these rocks are sheer on the other side that's not being studied.
Yeah, we would have to.
One side's covered in moss, and the other one is like straight up.
Yeah, we need a grappling hook to get up this one, maybe.
Yeah.
But we're with Lindsay Patterson and Marshall Escamilla from the Tumble Science Podcast for Kids, who have worked with NEPM to create an interactive dinosaur footprint adventure map. And we're on the map. We're on the tippity top of the map, which is in Gill in Barton Cove. Should we go look for these footprints?
Let's go check
We still
out
haven't seen any fossils yet. So this large tablet is where they slayed Aslan, right?
This is where he came back to life. Aslan himself.
Totally not a metaphor for anything.
Yeah.
In your world, I have another name.
Way to hit it right on the nose, C.S. Lewis. Okay, Marshall there's this big piece of rock. Marshall and Lindsay are dusting it off of the leaves that are falling here in the fall. And lo and behold, a 3-toed dinosaur. My fingers are in it right now.
But there's one like here too.
This obviously wasn't here originally. Somebody put this here.
Sure. I don't know when or why, but they did it.
Well, the why must be because of how many dinosaur footprints are in this one thing. Well, I mean, we easily see one there. Khalees saw another one over there.
I will say, when we talked to Alfred Venn, who's the curator at the Beniski Museum, he pointed out that kids are actually much better at seeing fossils than adults because they're just like willing to look with fresh eyes and see patterns that we might just be like, oh, random bumps, I'm not sure. But they find them really easily. And we've brought our kids here many times.
And do they find more than you?
Yeah.
So the name of these tracks is Gralator.
If they had found bones here, it wouldn't be, what is it, Gralator? It'd be a Skeletor.
Until we meet again!
Gralator. And that's the name of the tracks, and it's probably the case that this was made by a Coelophysis-like theropod. Theropod's like a family of dinosaurs that includes T-Rex and Dilophosaurus and all that. So one rule of thumb we learned from Alfred Venn, which has been verified by at least one paleontologist as being like, yeah, okay, is that the length of the footprint times 10 is about the length from nose to tail of the animal that made it.
Oh, cool.
So
that's a really fun, like, kind of math equation. So this looks like it's about 6 inches, maybe?
Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like its head would have been like gone out to here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like its tail. So it's like about like big dog size.
Yeah, real big dog.
Like about the size of a newfie.
And so this, for what is probably considered in people's minds a small dinosaur, still pretty big.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that we do with every stop on the map is set up some questions for our kids and their families to investigate. So for Gill, we ask them, find all of the dinosaur footprints that you can, which is something you might do anyway if you come here and know that there are footprints. But also to, sort of do your own investigation and imagine like some hypotheses of like, why were the dinosaurs here and what would they have looked like and like how would they have been moving? It's a way to sort of get beyond like, oh, cool dinosaur track, which is cool, but to like imagine yourself as we call them dino track explorers. And so you can explore the entire valley, whether you're seeing footprints that we know are there, footprints that you might find in a random outcrop, or just imagining the stories of the people who have been here and really helped the foundation of dinosaur paleontology, especially if you're interested in specifically the study of dinosaur tracks. It's called dinosaur ichnology, and Edward Hitchcock is known as the father of it. So it's like, this is literally where it started.
Is it called ichnology because Pond Scum made these and Pond Scum is ick?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it does include poop, right? Like,
yes! We can't talk to Tumble without talking about poop.
I mean, we can, but we haven't yet.
we do have on our Chicopee stop a story about how Hitchcock found a dinosaur poop.
Wow.
In Chicopee. He was, in
like
Chicopee
petrified?
Falls.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, yeah, there's dinosaur poop all over the place.
Really? How come that survived, but the bones didn't survive?
Probably for the same reason as like Jurassic armored mud balls. If it's soft enough and can gather enough protection, then it's just going to stay.
Yeah. I've been told, I'm not a paleontologist, disclaimer, like it has to do with the wetness or dryness of the conditions. So like...
So it depends on what the dinosaur ate for dinner the night before?
Exactly. But like around here it was all really, really wet, which is why we have all these like sandstone layers that are just showing up everywhere. They're river deposits or lake deposits or whatever. When it's really, really wet, bones don't get preserved because they just break down and dissolve into the lake. But I guess poop and footprints do get really well preserved in those conditions. So like if you look at that rock face, you see how there's like horizontal layers going all the way down? That was all mud, a layer of mud that got washed in with a river or with a lake or something.
Yeah. It was actually a waterfall, so that was already kind of dug out, which probably is what led the fossil collectors to kind of start hammering away at the sides of the cliff and pull out dinosaur tracks. So they just kind of excavated out from the pool that was already there.
All the tracks are going to be on the horizontal sections because these all used to be like riverbed or whatever. Mm-hmm. So to see the tracks, you kind of have to look at be looking down at one of the layers from the top. You're not going to see them in the side.
Right. And don't go doing that yourself. Leave it to the experts. Go to the places where they've already
peel
done it.
back a layer of rock. Don't excavate this
There's
any
a whole
further.
sign
Yeah,
that
there's a
tells
sign.
you not to do it.
There's another one right there. No rock or fossil collecting allowed.
But the one thing you can do is look at the sides of the quarry or really any other outcrop, as we have another stop not too far from here outside of the Great Falls Discovery Center, where you are looking at just a natural rock outcrop. And if you were in the parking lot, you'll be like, oh, just random rocks. But you can actually look and find dinosaur fossils there. You can see patterns that show you, like, this used to be a lake bed, this used to be a riverbed, and every single rock in this area has a story to tell. And I think that's what's so fascinating to me about it, is that you can just look around at your environment and say, hey, this all was here 200 million years ago. there's a reason why, there's this elevated landing or there's this steep drop off. It's all because you can see the story of Earth around us. And when you look for dinosaur fossils, you're seeing the evidence of what was going on at that time. And anyone can explore that. It's accessible to anyone. And that's why we wanted to create this project, was to show everyone that you can be a dino track explorer anywhere you are in the valley.
Apart from this place in Gill at Barton Cove where we are now, and the Discovery Center, which is right across the bridge, where are some of the other stops that people can go and find these dinosaur tracks with your map that you can find at NEPM.org?
Sure. Well, the biggest and easiest to access is down in Holyoke at the Dinosaur Footprint site, which is managed by the trustees.
We walk right by it on the march for the food bank, so if you want to come on that, we do make a pee stop where we can pee on the actual dinosaur footprints. Trying to add our own footprints, our own DNA to the science.
How many people could fill up one track? That's really a question.
Easy.
Yeah. Lindsay.
However you can, I guess.
So the Holyoke track site is one that you can see, and that's one that actually has had a bunch of really important science done on it. One thing in particular was talking about possible herding behavior amongst the Eubrontes track makers. Eubrontes are the bigger ones, could be Dilophosaurus, maybe. But there was one scientist we talked about in the track sites who used that as evidence for maybe these were herding dinosaurs and not just solitary hunters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it definitely looks like that here, too, because the tracks are the same size and they're pretty close together.
But that could be the one dinosaur going back and forth, so that's the kind of mystery that you try to uncover.
Sure. I mean, it makes sense to me.
What's really cool about your episode on Tumble Science Podcast, the full episode, is that the paleontologist you talked to discovered it's like a fingerprint, the footprint, and it was in his scientific opinion, definitely the same dinosaur on the same track at a different time. Probably walking up and down the riverbank trying to fish or something.
Exactly. And that was down in Springfield. And he's been studying this area for 50 years. And there's still more to find. One quote that really stuck with me, he told me that you could literally build your house out of dinosaur tracks. In this area, you're not allowed to.
I was like, I want to.
But it's that's the quantity of you could actually build something out of this that you could live in. So there's always more to be discovered.
How many types of dinosaurs have been identified in the 7 locations on your map?
I've been told there are 3 sort of main track specimens that show up over and over again. There's the Eubrontes, which is the big 3-toed theropod. There's the Gralator, which is what we're looking at down here. There's another one called Ankylosaurus, which is like a 2-legged sauropod, which sauropods are like brontosauruses and things. 200 million years ago, they didn't have 4 legs and they weren't quite so big. They were 2-legged. And so we have tracks of those guys. And then there's a bunch of others.
People may remember the story of creating Massachusetts' official dinosaur, which is the Podokesaurus holyokensis. How does that dinosaur tie into all of this in the map?
When we go to South Hadley, that's the story there that the Professor Mignon Talbot discovered Podokesaurus. But interestingly, the specimen was found without its feet, so they couldn't really...
Wow, so it's the exact opposite of the footprints.
And then that specimen was destroyed in a fire not too long after she found it.
Whoa.
So we only have a sort of scale model of it.
Well, there are 3 casts that were made that still survive. And one of the casts is in the possession of the Benesky Museum in Amherst. It is not on display because when they shipped it to Boston for the state dinosaur thing, it got damaged.
Oh my God.
So
be careful, people. These things are old.
But there are 2 other casts. I've been told that the 2 others are in the possession of Harvard University and Yale University.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is on the shelf in Alfred Venn's office at the Benesky Museum, which if you go visit and he's not there, you can peek in through the glass window and see it.
Everybody go do this.
Yes. Don't be creepy about it.
The other one I've seen is on display at the Peabody Museum at Yale. You can go see it. It's on the 2nd floor and a weird shelf with a bunch of weird things that aren't labeled. There's a dinosaur. That's Podokesaurus, the model that was made in like circa 1915 by Edward Lull.
You don't have to break into Skull and Bones at Yale
You
to see it.
don't have to break in. You can just go
Ironic,
to the museum and then like you can go in and you can be like, I have secret knowledge. I know what that is.
And then you'll be accepted into Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
Marshall's a huge fan of Podokesaurus, so this was like seeing a celebrity for him.
Yeah, I was like, there it is!
It's much harder to see in the wild, so I understand.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I took a picture and I sent it to one of the paleontologists that helped us with this project. And he was like, weird model, old, inaccurate, but cool.
I think that prints are underappreciated in sort of the popular imagination of what is a dinosaur fossil. Like, you know, you go into a museum or see pictures in books and it's like big, gigantic, like huge bones, huge skulls, but actually seeing these dinosaur footprints tells us something that those fossils, the bone fossils, cannot. As the scientist said in our episode, these are the prints of living, moving creatures. You can see actual behavior, and the fact that like you can come here to the Pioneer Valley and still find them yourself as a kid, as anyone interested, even accidentally, find dinosaur prints is just so incredible.
One thing that's really cool about tracks is that they're capturing, in some cases, like a single day. One day, 200 million years ago, where something happened. And like when on our stop at the Benesky Museum in Amherst, we talk about 3 different things that you can see with your own eyes based on looking at the tracks. Like one of them is there's a dinosaur that had a hurt toe. And like you can see that in the footprint.
Wow.
One of its toes is missing and it's not putting to, like you can see it limp. And like there's another one that's a dinosaur, like a tiny little guy who got caught in a rainstorm. You can see him get rained on and be like, and then and like run away.
So a dino who's sore and a dino who's soaked.
And there's another one that is truly my favorite. The familiar name they have for it at the museum is beach bum. And it's an impression of a dinosaur who just like sat down on the edge of a lake. And like you can see its 2 little feet, its 2 little legs, and then its butt print preserved in this fossil.
I love it.
Just a little guy like, yep.
That dinosaur is me.
It's just incredible how much it can bring it alive, the fact that dinosaurs were walking where we are now. And it just takes some imagination to kind of build that out and appreciate it.
And it's so cool that this place is the place where that mode of science started. And we get to still experience it today.
Greenfield was the place where the first tracks ever to be scientifically studied were found.
Right in front of Magpie was where they discovered the first ever dinosaur tracks that were described by a scientist.
And to find out that there are tracks up and down the valley, and, you know, we have a dinosaur-obsessed toddler, like, it was just finding out that we'd, like, landed in heaven, in dinosaur heaven, and how important it is for the entire study of paleontology. This is a really rare kind of place that the people who study here, you know, go all around the world to find other places where they can match the conditions.
What we didn't tell NEPM listeners is that whenever you come look at the dinosaur tracks, Marshall and Lindsay from Tumble Science are always there. What's your name down there?
I'm Kara.
Kara, you're here with 4 young ones looking at these dinosaur footprint tracks after just listening to the Tumble Science Podcast?
Yes, literally we listened on the way here.
Oh my God, and that gave you the instructions as to how to find us, where we just happened to be here with the dinosaur footprints in the woods.
It's wild.
This is a big celebrity sighting for you guys. You promise to be there for everybody whenever they go look at these?
Yes, I will devote my entire life to being there for children.
A magic school bus situation.
Are you excited to see the dinosaur footprints, kids?
Yes. Right now you're on a scientist field expedition. This is exactly what scientists do when they go out to study dinosaur tracks.
Carnivores are what, meat eaters or plant eaters?
Meat eaters.
Meat eaters, right? And so if you're a meat eater, you need really sharp claws to like stab things, right? So you think this was probably a meat eater?
Maybe.
Now, one question, how big do you think that is, the animal that made that footprint?
It's probably a medium size, so like this tall?
You think that tall? Yeah, maybe. From its tail to its head, it was like that.
Oh, that I think that's as big as, that's as long as a Dromaeosaurus, actually.
Really into the Dromaeosaurus.
Yeah, you're really into Dromaeosaurus. Can I confess something to you? I've never heard of a Dromaeosaurus before.
Well, in a show called Dino Dinner, there's a girl who, that dinosaur is her favorite dinosaur.
All right. Well, so does it, what does it look like?
Well, it's green.
Okay.
And his teeth this big.
That's interesting. So what does it eat?
I don't know. Like smaller dinosaurs, like Microraptor.
Oh, okay.
One of the smallest dinosaurs ever discovered.
I think I'm getting a sense of who's the dino nut in your family.
Well, I do love science.
And if you have a dino nut in your family who loves science, you can find the Tumble Science Podcast for Kids Dino Map Adventure at nepm.org/dinomap.
It was made possible with support from the Bement School, the Center School, HCS Head Start, the Campus School at Smith College, and Cochrane Dental. Thanks again to Marshall and Lindsay from Tumble, based right here in Greenfield.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. It's our 400th show, Khalees Smith.
Happy 400!
Yeah.
It's weird to think that it's been that long. It's strange.
It sure is. I will say, that day where we got to go and look at dinosaur footprints with Tumble and then went to go see Cloudbelly at the Shea, that was like one of the best days we've had, in my opinion. I was like, it's so cool what I get to do for my job.
I know. Just go and hang out and find out new things about the place that we live and share them with everybody.
And again, you can find out for yourself that science podcast map of dino tracks at NEPM.org. And for our 401st show, tomorrow we'll explore the art of one of the founders of the Stavros Center, which celebrates its 50th anniversary this year, when we check out the art of activist Christos Palamas.
Indeed, we'll head to Northampton to do that. Plus, we'll have a chance to check out another congressional challenger when we speak with Nadia Milleran.
We'll find out when we talk to her tomorrow. She's running as independent for the 1st Congressional District.
Against Richie Neal, I'm Khalees Smith.
I'm Monty Belmonte.
We'll talk to you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413. Happy 400!